Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Julianne Grant from the ISA Marketing and Sales Summit, also from Tools and Technology. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for our webinar on Key Account Management, Lessons from Industry Leaders. I'm really happy you're going to spend the next 60 minutes with us. I'm really excited to have this information coming to you today from the folks at Solutions Insights. Both Steve Hurley and Matt Leary are here with me. Before we get started, though, I'm going to just talk a little bit about ISA. This webinar is brought to you by ISA, which stands for the International Society of Automation. ISA has been around since 1945, and we have more than 30,000 members worldwide, specifically focused in the automation industry. And their mission is really to become the standard for automation, both from a technology standpoint, advancing the whole technology behind automation, as well as advancing the profession of automation. And they're doing a lot of things in terms of providing education, publishing information, technical articles, and also develop standards for the industry, in case you may have not have known that. And so what's interesting about ISA is I've been a member for a few years now, and that there's just a variety of different ways you can participate. There are industry groups, there are technology specializing groups, there are special interest groups. So, it depends on what your area of interest is, but if you're from an industry like food and pharma, if you're more of a specialist in analysis and safety, there are groups available for you to network with and meet other peers that have and share the same interests. The other thing I wanted to note is ISA has their biggest event is their Automation Week, and it's being held October 17th to the 20th in Mobile, Alabama. We encourage you to check out that link for more information. Now, I am a director-elect coming in for the ISA Management Division. I take over in 2013, but right now Steve Prettyman from Dow Chemical is the current director of the Management Division. And the ISA Marketing and Sales Summit is brought to you by, is part of this division. And really what the Management Division represents is a cross-section of all industry segments and special interest groups from ISA. And what we're focused on is providing an environment where members can really develop their skills and share experiences for those who are either in management now or are trying to grow into a management role. And right now we're working on setting up a professional certification program that helps develop core competencies in management in the areas that you can see here on this graph. So change management, conflict management, project management, and so on. And so this is all something that's in the process of being developed with ISA division folks. And I just wanted to also mention about the ISA Marketing and Sales Summit, because this webinar series is really sort of a primer to help share some of the types of information that's going to be brought to you at the Marketing and Sales Summit. And ours is coming up right around the corner. It's like 2 weeks, September 7th through the 9th at the Chase Park Plaza in St. Louis. Our theme this year is Are You Ready for Customer 2.0? And so and what we mean by that is there's just so much happening in the digital frameworks and digital technology and in the way we market and sell to our customers. And customers have a lot more access to information and a lot more access to peers and other opinions besides our companies and the vendors we represent. So we want to help all of us in the automation industry better prepare for the changes that are happening. And we have a whole bunch of great content planned this year. We have the people who attend. It's just a really good group of marketing and sales folks, product managers, business development folks, and we invite you to consider coming. We'll talk a little bit more about some specifics at the end of this conference, at the end of this webinar, but here's just a little quick overview of the way the days break out on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And we encourage you to take a look at the website. It's themarketingsalessummit.com. And it's always a great time. I've been going for the last 6 years, and I always find it to be the best event for me every year because I get to meet great people, learn great things, and just have so much good information to take back to the office. So with no further ado, we're going to move right into the topic of today in the webinar. I'm really pleased to introduce to you both Steve Hurley and Matt Leary from Solutions Insights. Steve is a longtime management consultant who spent many years at Arthur D. Little and also has done an exceptional amount of work at an organization called the Information Technology Services Marketing Association. And that's where he met Matt Leary, and who was also, had a sales and marketing role in the publishing industry before he started really doing a lot of work for the ITSMA, which is what that group stands for. And together they founded Solutions Insights a few years ago, which is focused on helping large all size B2B companies and help them move from a product focus to a solutions focus. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Steve. Steve?
Julian, thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I will wish you a good morning, and I can say good morning because I am right now in St. Louis, where the ISA conference will be September 7th to the 9th, and hopefully I will see you there. Before I get into my materials, though, there's two areas I'd like your advice since I am out here today. Number one is the heat index is expected to hit 110, so if anyone knows how to deal with heat like that, which I'm not sure I've ever seen, let me know. The other is I'm moving my son into college this afternoon at St. Louis University, so any advice on how to go through that process would be more than welcome. So it's going to be a very interesting day for me. As Julianne mentioned, my partner in crime is on the line with me. Matt, are you there?
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Great. You will hear a lot from Matt, especially as we get into the details and some of the examples of what's going on with key account management. Today's topic is a very important one. Key accounts have always been important. They have always taken the attention of marketing and sales, but as you'll see in this presentation, that has been ratcheted up significantly. We've done reasonably deep research over the past month or so looking at this, both secondary and primary, and I will tell you more about that. Because of the technology, I will be cueing Julianne to move the slides. So Julianne, you go to the next one. The agenda for today is, hold on just a second, please. The agenda for today is I will cover some of the background objectives and how we went through this study. Then I will show you the findings and conclusions that we've divided into what we call the 10 Commandments and then the major trends. And finally, we will wrap this up with a couple of slides summarizing what we've talked about. On the next slide, this is a very brief description of who we are at Solutions Insights. As Julianne mentioned, we work with B2B companies. We help them move from primarily a product focus to be more solutions focused. In other words, how do you integrate your services in a way that effectively gives the customers what they need in their own business environments? You'll see on the left side that falls into 4 areas of offering: strategic integration, offering distinction, customer connection, and finally, how to improve sales, and look at the logos of some of our recent clients. So moving on, let's start out and make sure we have the same base of what we're talking about here. What do we mean by key account management, and what is it? Well, there's different terminology. Some people call it large account management. Some people use terminology of top account management. So there's different phrasings that we kept running into as we did our research. But effectively, this is about how do you plan and manage that entire relationship between yourself and your most important customers. So that's really effectively where we're going with this. Now, how you define most important customers is up to each individual company. Some companies do it by revenue, some by profitability, some by strategic importance, sometimes, frankly, and it's a little sad to say, sometimes it's pure, almost serendipitous. On the next slide, here is an indication of who we talked to in terms of the secondary research. Julianne, if you can fill out that slide. We looked at information that we pulled from IDC. Those of you in the tech sector would recognize them as one of the larger research houses. They do a lot of work in the sales and marketing area. Strategic Account Management Association, obviously they do a lot in this area. Julianne referred to ITSMA, and certainly in the tech sector especially, they have a relatively deep knowledge and issues around key account management. And of course, McKinsey has published a lot in this area that we looked at. And finally, we talked to a number of people that we feel are strong in this area as consultants or experts. So that's the secondary sources that we looked at. In the next slide, you'll see who we talked to. So this is a list of 14 companies over the past few weeks that we had the privilege of talking to their key players, either the person directly in charge of their key account program, the person who's certainly familiar with it. So most of those are household names, if you want, brand names that are trying to deal with very large accounts, and so That was important to us to get it from the horse's mouth. On the next slide, basically tees up the next section, which is really what what we've learned and what we want to share with you. So top level, here are the two main messages I would like to leave with you. One is, KAM programs are extremely dynamic, and they're certainly more dynamic in the last 5-7 years than previous. And the reasons for this is technology is enabling companies to do more and develop relationships better and differently with their key customers. The macroeconomic setting is now dictating that you absolutely need to hold on to your best customers and spend more time hunting for new opportunities with them rather than going after a lot of new opportunities. New opportunities have not dried up, but they certainly are not as available as they were if you go back a half a decade or a decade when the economy was much more robust. The second key point is that the KAM programs will continue to grow in importance, and there's a lot of implications around that. So if you in fact agree that your key account management program is now where you have to put more of an effort and the need to be more productive and offer you more, what do you have to do about that? What does that mean? And that's what we'll get into here. So the next slide basically lays out how KAM programs have usually operated in the past. And I've been in a number of key account sessions that have gone basically like this. The first thing is you bring the salespeople together and you say, okay, how are we doing? You look at the numbers, you identify the gap between where you should be with your key account and where you are. Panic sets in. People start running around the room in virtually every direction, and then you send them out to hit the phones and sell more. And this sounds very simplistic. It sounds almost silly, but sadly enough, I've seen variations of this theme with some of the best companies. And certainly, if I mention them, you'd probably be surprised that this is sort of the approach that I've actually witnessed. Now, why doesn't just more phone calls, more touches, more FaceTime work anymore? Well, in the next slide, I lay out a few reasons why. Number one is your customers are smarter than they were a decade or two ago. The information age has made them smarter and given them more information than they've ever had. So they self-educate. They know what they want. They know where to get it. In fact, there's a phrase we always use in the tech sector for technology companies that are buying solutions. We always say that you don't sell them something, they buy it. In other words, they understand what they need and where to shop, even before your salespeople often even get to them. So that has been a major shift again in recent years. The other issue is we've seen too many key account programs where the account teams are poorly organized and they are not at all connected together in any way. I just came off a job with one of the largest companies in the chemical sector, and literally their top 3 or 4 account teams couldn't even give me a list of who was officially on the team. So one would think that most major corporations would be on this, but we still see a lot of issues around just organization and discipline. The third factor is the planning cycle. Companies quite often plan to their needs, and if it's a publicly held company, those needs usually run in quarterly cycles, rather than what their customers or what their key accounts are planning against. If it's a pharma, they've got a 10 to 15-year plan cycle. If it's a company in the aeronautics industry, they may be looking farther than that. So, what is it that you should be helping them with? What should you be looking for in terms of their cycles rather than your own? On the next slide, we've listed out what we consider the 10 commandments or key success factors to be effective with the KAM program. Now, this one slide by itself could be a webinar and more. But we just wanted to lay these out to you, and we'll spend more time on what we identified as the more recent trends that many people, even as we went through this process, were not aware of. So going through this, make your program a priority. This is not just a simple marketing program like you would have for your trade shows or for any other simple program. If you're going to take KAM seriously, push it to the top of the ladder. Accountability around your program tools sounds again like, well, of course, Steve, everyone should be accountable for these. I would say the majority of companies we talked to, it was not clear who was accountable for all the tools supporting the KAM programs. And there are so many tools. There's the CRM tools that are available, and on and on. And they have to be tailored. They have to be used properly for KAM accounts, and somebody has to be accountable to make sure that happens. The third one is something that certainly Matt can attest to, and he and I have spent a lot of time on this, is you can't use a peanut butter approach in gaining knowledge and information across your KAM accounts. Each account in itself requires very, very deep research. You really need to understand the DNA of how they work. And it's not just because it's a good thing for you to do, it's because they are now demanding it. If you can't knock on their door, fully understanding everything about them and coming up with innovative ideas and insights beyond what they're thinking about, they frankly don't want to talk to you anymore. The fourth of our 10 commandments is provide them with training. Now everyone knows that there is large account training out there. Miller Hyman has one, Taz has a program. And what they tend to train is how to sell. This says that that's not enough. If you really want effective KAM accounts and KAM teams, you need to train them on aspects like teamwork, team building, leadership. How is the account team going to integrate? How are they going to operate? So it's beyond just sales skills that key account teams need these days. The fifth is sharing internally. With today's technology tools, it has become relatively easy now. And social media tools, it's become almost simple across the accounts to share information, pull out best practices, and be economic in how you run the program. The sixth is ensure that there's already a solid account planning process. Again, this is one of the commandments that everyone would raise their eyebrow and say, well, yeah, I mean, that's pretty obvious. Again, there's another major company that we recently interviewed, and they were trying to overlay a KAM program on top of a sales and marketing culture where they didn't have simple key account strategies to begin with. So how would you go to more specialized KAM methodologies if they don't know who's on the account team, they don't have simple planning tools, they don't get together on a regular basis, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a foundational commandment if you want. I mentioned matching the planning cycle with the account cycle. That's number 7. Number 8, make sure that the KAM program is fully integrated into the rest of what you're doing in marketing. It should not be hanging out there by itself. 9 is about metrics. Make sure you have the right metrics that measure the right things and really help you in moving the program forward in the right way. And the last, my favorite Nike expression, stop planning and just do it. Make it happen. Next slide, please, Julian. Now, after talking with all these companies and wading through all of the secondary research that Matt and I came up with, we looked at, okay, well, what's really different here? What can we tell this audience, and what can we tell people out in St. Louis that is changed, that they need to be aware of as they look to make the changes to their own KAM programs? And we identified 5 categories where, when we asked these companies, what are you doing differently today as opposed to last year or the year before, or what are you planning to do differently, they tended to fall into these buckets. Next slide, please. So the first one is all about centralized management and control, that no longer are companies willing to allow each KAM team to operate independently, come up with their own strategies, manage their own budgets, decide how they're going to put on their account teams, etc. The best programs appear to be the ones that were centrally managed and operated for economies of scale, for better sharing of communications, etc., etc. And you'll see a couple of the reasons here why that is so. Technology allows the sharing of information to be simpler than it ever was. As we all know, cost is a huge issue in every company we talk to, and I'm guessing every company on this line. And you can find economies of scale if you go to a centralized model. And the third is the accounts that they are looking at, if they were local or national to begin with, are likely going global now. So you have to match your global management of the program with their global reach. So those are the trends we saw in the first one. And if you can go to the next slide, please, Julianne. What I'd like to do now is get Matt involved in this discussion and presentation. For each of these 5 trends, I will show you the slide here with some examples, some specific examples of what companies are doing differently. And rather than going through all 3 in the interest of time, we thought we would describe one to you. So Matt, probably the example number 1, because of concentrated authority, the central KAM team has access to boards and committees, might be one for you to talk to this group.
Yeah, I agree, Steve, and I think this is a great example for a couple of reasons. Certainly, it matches the trend that on paper and in name, the key account management program is centralized in a corporate function. But this company, which is a large industrial and technology conglomerate, kind of took it a step further. And the idea is it's not just to have central management, it's also access and authority. And this organization is very large, a very multi-billion-dollar company, but it has several management boards, sales boards, marketing, product development, vertical, horizontal boards. And instead of letting this KAM group kind of come up through the channels for specific requests for customers or research or development tools, this program gave them the direct access to each of these boards. So they were, in a sense, at their disposal for the key account managers, so that times could be shortened, effectiveness could be raised around issues that affected these top accounts. So it's a very clever way to open the doors for these account teams and get beyond just centralization on paper.
Great. Thanks, Matt. And by the way, for the audience on this call, if you'd like more details on any of the other examples, we'd be happy to talk with you about that offline, or certainly if you have the opportunity to go to the conference in St. Louis, we can talk quite extensively about any of these trends with not only these 3 examples, but others that we were able to pull out. So, Julianne, if you could move on to the next trend that we identified. So the next trend is that more and more money is being focused on dedicated marketing activities. And so not only is sales interested in bumping up and increasing their initiatives and activities to sell, but they're inviting marketing in to be part of the party, to be part of the activities. So marketing is now being looked at as a co-equal by many companies to look at ways to widen the entryway into their key accounts and to find new opportunities. So some of the reasons for this is that the complexity of what companies are selling, and certainly we refer to that as complex solutions, is difficult for many of the customers and the key accounts to understand easily and absorb what it's all about and appreciate the value and get everyone on board behind it. So it is no longer good enough for a salesperson to go in with a single piece of collateral and describe offers. It takes a much longer educational process to get the customer on board. Ergo, marketing is very adept at doing that. The other is there are tools, marketing technology and tools that allow them to work with sales to get into these accounts with better communications, develop new relationships, provide better information in a way that never was there before. And the third is, and I briefly talked about this earlier, your customers don't want to hear from sales as they want to be educated and be seen as a partner with you as a vendor. And so it's a different mentality, it's a different type of person they want to talk to. Not that salespeople are not, at the end of the day, value add, but alone they don't bring as much value as they do if they bring marketing into the game with them. And that's what customers are looking for. So rather than the traditional sales process, they're sitting there saying, okay, you know, I've worked with you before. What new ideas do you have? What innovation can you bring my way? How can you help me solve these 3 major business challenges I have? Once we get into those dialogues, you can talk to me about selling. There are good examples behind how marketing activities are being ratcheted up. Julianne, if you can go to the next slide. And I think the one we'll focus on here is probably I think the first one, and then the third one, I believe, Matt. Is that correct? And that is about a custom customer intelligence and management portal.
And we're probably not doing this one justice in the sentence we put here. This is a large telecommunications, really global, based out of Europe, global telecommunications provider. And one of the big challenges marketing sees in running account-based marketing programs is managing all the sources of information: customer intelligence, product management intelligence, market data, the raw information about moves in the management team, the customer. So the first step this company took was created literally a single point of view portal where they manage the CRM, some of their marketing automation tools in these large accounts, and then just all this data that they had compiled to provide literally to the key account team on each of the major key accounts. But they really did something different this year, which really got us to raise our eyebrows, is they made it proactive in real time. They use both a software tool to run the portal, but they also have a dedicated marketing team behind it, both in Europe and offshore in India and Asia. And anytime something significant happens with the client, they both report it through the tool, they give analysis as best they can real time, then there's suggestions on what campaigns, what marketing tools, even what solutions to suggest based on the change. So for example, one of their largest clients made a major financial speech on Wall Street about how they're changing some of the way they leverage their or they manage their costs. It had a big implication to our client, and within 24 hours they had analyzed the situation and proposed a specific basic email and proposal approach for the key account manager to take back to the CFO of their account. So it's a very proactive tool. And frankly, we see a lot of folks moving to being a reactive marketing organization to support key accounts, to take this more proactive role of conditioning the market and the customer around these key accounts.
Great. Great explanation, Matt. And by the way, before we leave this slide, I want to turn your attention to example 1 on ITSMA's account-based marketing methodology. It's a great model. It has been adopted by, oh gosh, I can't even count how many companies, certainly across the tech sector. And we will be spending more time on that particular model because we will have more time when we are at the conference in September here in St. Louis. So that is something that is extremely effective, and we look forward to those of you that come to the conference talking to you about that one. So Julianne, the next trend on the next slide is about becoming a trusted advisor. That this is, it's sort of a buzzword, but it is sticking everywhere, and virtually everyone we talk to said, you know, they don't want to buy things, they don't want to be sold things, they want to work with a company that literally will understand their problems, share their problems, own the problems, and resolve them. And Matt and I were actually on a call just yesterday with one of the world's largest technology companies out of Europe, and this was her refrain time and time again, that I don't want a vendor, I want somebody who understands and knows my problems with me. That's who I want to work with long term. So we're looking at these KAM programs as driving towards this trusted advisor status. And Matt has a couple of examples to highlight, but before we go to that example, I do want to point out this wonderful graphic. We have a fabulous graphics expert that works with us on all of our slides and websites, etc. And she gave me 3 options for this slide, and she said, I absolutely dare you to put this one up of the 2 kids with sunglasses. And I was silly enough to take her dare, but somehow in her mind, this represented a trusted advisor status. So the last point I want to make is probably the third bullet, that trusted is the goal of, or if you want, Nirvana for a vendor, is not only done out of helpfulness for them, but it's actually out of fear and paranoia that they can't afford to lose that customer. And in today's market, the competition is so intense. They have to do absolutely everything they can do to maintain those accounts. So on the next slide, you'll see 3 examples. And Matt, I believe the one that you've got a couple of notes on is the first one.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we've seen a lot about in terms of improving the trusted advisor status is this idea of bringing innovation, R&D, closer to the customer. And a lot of the firms we talked to in the study were doing that, taking R&D out of the ivory tower, out of the central lab, and bringing those experts much closer to key accounts. This one was an exception in that they were actually doing co-research with their top accounts, and not just co-research on kind of functionality or technical issues. They actually had set aside significant budget within the key account program to allow the key account managers in concert with their customers decide on whatever they thought was important to research to help better improve the relationship. So, for example, in their public accounts group in this large technology conglomerate, they were working with, for example, the state of California, and literally start to study some of the social and cultural issues that were driving the way the average citizen in the state of California interacted with the state agencies and how they developed and delivered services. So it's really kind of an interesting best practice to not only talk the talk about bringing R&D closer to the customer, but putting your money where your mouth is and allowing the customer, him or herself, to decide how that research money is spent in a kind of co-beneficial approach. And of course, every piece of data helps this company better tailor its solutions to the needs of a state like California. So only increases the trusted advisor status they have with their customers.
Great, a great example. Julianne, if you move the slide, you'll tee up the next trend that we saw. This is one that, for some reason, is near and dear to my heart. I've spent a lot of time in talent development, talent management training, and HR type of functions. And there is clearly a different type of person that is needed to not only manage these KAM programs, but also be on the team. And you'll see a couple of notes here of what's going on. In the past, when you were forming your key account team, you looked at your best salesperson and said, well, you've been successful. We're going to put you at the top of the heap. Sometimes that worked. Sometimes that was exactly the right person because the reasons he or she was successful also led to a deeper relationship inside of that account. Other times it didn't because the skills required to manage a complex account team could be quite different than simply being a good salesperson. And so companies are seeing that they have to really look hard at who is running their key accounts, what kind of capabilities do they have, what potential do they have to move into other important roles in the organization. And you'll see another bullet down here. The second bullet, if I can draw your attention to it, is the reason for the shift, is basically what's happening in terms of the market and the dynamics between the buyer and the seller. The geographic diversity and disbursement is a big factor. Another factor is what is being sold and what is being communicated by the account team. And again, that gets back to our concept of the complexity of solutions. So all of these factors are funneling into the fact that companies need to look very hard at who's running the key accounts and who's on the key account teams, and are they the right people with the right skill sets and with the right experience. Now we have two examples of this on the next slide. In the first one, I think Matt and I looked at each other and said, this one is no-brainer. This is a fabulous example of a company that is going the extra mile to make sure they've got the right people in the right places. Matt, would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, I think this is a large European firm, and interestingly enough, the difference between these and some of the other firms we looked at, certainly there's spot-on spot training programs from consultative selling to executive relationship management skills in a lot of the other programs, which were encouraging. This was just a very complete program from both doing the surveys and external research to determine the ideal profile of the key account manager, to then mapping their internal learning organization for custom skills, training, and development, and then, frankly, forming a certification program so that at the end you are separated from your peers and recognized for going both through this training and receiving that certification. So we were just impressed about the robust nature of this program and how complete it was in achieving really unique key account management training. Steve?
Yep, thank you. Julianne, our last trend. So the fifth trend that we've identified is that companies are spending more attention to the fact that they have to provide the right incentives and the right compensation plan, not only to individual salespeople, but to key account teams. So we're seeing much more financial benefits going to the team approach, to everyone who is expected to be a contributor to growing that account, rather than allowing it to be a little more Darwinian, where the best salespeople cream out all the money from the growth of that account. So why has this happened? Why are the carrots a little different, and why are they a little bigger in terms of motivating not only the individuals, but more importantly the team? Well, one of the reasons is basically because the packages today are needed to get the right people in those roles. There is a dearth of key people, and if you don't offer the right incentives for account management and have the account management teams managed properly, then it will not succeed, obviously. And the way to get the right people with the right skills to make the entire team effective across that account is obviously having the right incentive systems. So as everyone knows who's been in sales, salespeople are actually quite sharp, and they understand the best way to get from point A to point B, and they understand the best way to maximize their compensation. And if it's all in individual sales, that's what they go after. If some of this is shifted to the right place in promoting team selling, team development, relationship development, and account development, that's where they're going to put their time and energies. We have a couple of examples of this on the next slide. Matt, would you like to describe one of these?
Well, as Steve was mentioning, compensation and any kind of financial management in sales is certainly one of the holy cows that is often not touched in some of these programs, because it is such a sacred element. And a lot of these programs are trying to apply a peanut butter approach to sales compensation, from very small regional accounts to national accounts to key accounts. A few of the firms we studied did break out of this. They followed Steve's 10th commandment, and they just did it. They separated the compensation out at the key account level. The first example is probably one of the best, and the big differentiator there was the idea of creating a pot of incentive money that both the key account and the team shared based on team performance metrics alongside individual contributor metrics. And a kind of interesting way they did that, not only did they measure the traditional quarterly and annual measurements that any sales incentive program has, they also looked at some of the future growth. And again, as Stephen said earlier, one of the 10 commandments was this idea of matching your development to the longer term strategic development of their accounts. This company took the leap and started doing some of the variable compensation proposed on the longer-term funnel to incent them to look at filling a lot more innovation and certainly new business development in that funnel. Again, very few firms are successful at this because of the nature of sales comp being so tough to change. But I think this one really was able to convince their management that that was the way key account executives were going to perform better, and frankly, what separated them from traditional account managers was they needed to recognize that ability to manage the team and look into the future. Dave?
Yep, thanks, Matt. So that's a summary of the 5 most obvious trends we saw as we did our research. So the slide you're looking at now is our summary slide, our takeaway slide for you on the 2 buckets of information and insights we hope you take away. The first is the 10 Commandments for success with your KAM program. And the second is, outside of those that many of those have been truisms for many years, what have we seen that's a little different, newer, and that companies are really focusing their attention and their budgets on today? And those are the 5 trends that you see in the lower part of this. So between those, hopefully you've picked up some new ideas, some insights into what to do with your own KAM program. And at this point, I guess we would like to open this to any questions you might have. Julianne?
Great, thanks, Steve and Matt. That was a really great overview. Thank you for that. If anyone would like to ask a question, I'd ask that you either raise your hand and I will unmute you, and you can ask a question directly to Steve and Matt, or you can send a chat or a question in through your panel on GoToWebinar. So, but while we're waiting for some folks to maybe decide to ask a question, I had a question for you, if you don't mind, because you talked a little bit about the whole trusted advisor kind of approach, and that's something that we've all heard a lot about, in terms of complex selling, but then it makes me wonder, what's really is its value, because, at the end of the day, aren't companies going to shift to someone who provides a better price, or, is it really about the value proposition? So, I mean, how do you become more trusted than the other person you're competing with?
Great question, Julianne. And, I guess I can't dance around this too long because there isn't a clean, absolute answer to it. But let me give a couple of comments around it. Number one is there will always be some companies that no matter how well you treat your customer, and no matter what you do and how many somersaults you do for them, if somebody comes in with a lower price, they are gone in a heartbeat. And so you have to understand that about them. You have to do your homework and understand that is their culture and behavior. That's how they operate. What we are seeing, however, is they are in the minority. That most companies now have such deep-rooted problems, and these are not simple issues that companies are facing today for them to be competitive and grow in their markets. That if in fact you can help them with insights, if in fact you can help them with their business to help them grow rather than just sell things to you, they will remember that. They will give you a benefit of the doubt in the tight competition for around the next sales cycle. So in general, as we talk to people, they don't want to jump from vendor to vendor, but they want one that will stick with them, that will give them a break when they need it, and allow them more leniency on price down the road, and will be with them in the long haul. So even though there are companies that will jump at a heartbeat for a lower price or a different proposition, I think the term trusted advisor is becoming more and more solid and more believable, and something that companies need to take seriously. Matt, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's to our point earlier, to maybe put more pressure on the point, it's becoming essential. And with a few of our examples, you just have to challenge yourself to think about what are the other ways to achieve that. Maybe that you'll never get to the point that you can comfortably sit back and say, I am a trusted advisor. But the point is to constantly pursue that through some of the more aggressive programs or approaches we're suggesting.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. Appreciate that. We got a question in from Julie Frazier. Julie asks, can you describe whether the sales team had pushback in changing compensation as well as the management team? Is that part of what you need to train an account manager to understand?
Good question.
Great question.
Yeah, I have not seen a tremendous amount of pushback. I think it depends how it's positioned. And obviously, if a salesperson says, whoa, part of this comp is going to go to my colleagues, even though I'm the top sales guy, he or she has to see that that comp is going to be spread to include him. And he has to obviously understand that the more that the account team works as a team, long term, the better it is for him or her for his or her personal sales opportunities. In general, I think that's true, but I'm guessing there are still some salespeople that are what I would call lone rangers, and they will not change your stripes easily, and they will probably be upset. Matt, have you seen different trends or incidents?
Well, no, I think the funny thing is, for some of these more innovative changes, the account manager's actually been the driver on a lot of these. If we look back at, dig into our research a little, some of this is driven out of marketing, some was a business management decision to make some of these changes to key account management programs. But the ones that are grassroots, right, that are driven from maybe some of the top tier key account managers, those tend to be some of the great programs. And incentives, I think, falls into that bucket. At the end of the day, if you're going to keep a key account manager who's really knocking the ball out of the park interested, you have to address these. And more often than not, they're the ones raising the issues because they're the ones making the decisions. Should I stay with this firm? I love what I'm doing, but the compensation doesn't match the kind of stuff they're asking us to do in terms of long-term strategic development. So again, a few examples we dug into, the key account manager in some cases was the driver behind some of those changes.
Great point. And let me throw on one more comment and move on to the next question here, and that is what I've observed at a couple of companies is if you take a little more of a team approach in the compensation, all of a sudden each team member holds each other person accountable. And so if somebody is not carrying their weight, they will find out about it very quickly, not from his direct report, but from his colleagues also. Because now everyone's got a little skin in the game that they may lose if everyone doesn't hold up their own responsibilities, which personally I think is a good thing.
Good point.
Okay. We have a question from Jeff Colley. I'm going to unmute Jeff.
Unmuted.
Howdy. Yes. Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you fine.
Good. The added activities and the resources required for them that you've talked about sound like they can be quite expensive. Where do you look to cut expenses or at least use KAM dollars more efficiently?
Good question. And I doubt there's anyone on this call that isn't concerned about anything that increase costs. I guess what we've seen is as you make these programs more robust and add in more marketing activities, the best way to economize on that and reduce that cost or reduce the increase, shall I say, is to make sure any marketing activity you're doing is leveraged as best you can across as many accounts as you can. So, for example, if you produce a great white paper for one of your accounts, look at that white paper and say, how can this be repurposed? It's spot on for this account, but can we take this and move it on to other accounts in other sectors or within this sector at marginal costs? So you have to be very vigilant to say, for each activity we're doing, how else can other key account teams leverage it? Matt, any other suggestions on how marketing teams can make sure that they're spending their additional dollars in KAM programs effectively?
Well, it's funny. Key account managers aren't known as P&L managers, and it is an element of kind of talent or skill we're seeing more of, is to either force or find the right key account manager who can think of their account as a business. And in that sense, there's a lot better control and management of those dollars. It's one thing for a key account manager to reach into someone else's purse to make decisions about spending. It's another when they know the scope of their budget and what will work and what won't. It certainly focuses their attention on things like metrics and measurement and that kind of stuff. So again, a few firms were kind of treating their KAMs as P&L business managers in that respect, which makes them a lot more, I don't know if it increases austerity, but it certainly increases effectiveness.
Great. We got another question in here from Jose Carlos Olvera. Jose asks, today a lot of companies are using NPS metrics. What's your opinion about it for use in KAM?
Okay, I will not lie. I'm not sure what NPS stands for.
Can you send me another chat what NPS stands for?
Net Promoter, is that what we're talking about? Is NPS? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the Net
Oh,
Promoter.
I thought it was M as in Mary.
N as in Nancy, PS.
Yes, I'm assuming Net Promoter.
Is that Net Promoter? Got it. Okay.
Yeah, Net Promoter. Yes, thank you, Walt.
So interesting. Steve, you want to talk about loyalty in general, or go ahead?
No, go ahead. I'll come in behind you on this one.
Well, it's interesting. Certainly Net Promoter Scores are especially in our kind of backyard, this is the technology space, are permeated all elements of loyalty programs, including some of the key account programs we see. Unfortunately, I don't think Net Promoter Scores are as effective in a market of one. That's a personal bias. Based on that. And let me give you an example. One of the programs I'm familiar with that's outside of this study, in fact, it's pretty public, a company called Telstra, which is the Australian telecommunications group. They had, for their largest accounts, moved on beyond Net Promoter to really do, and they have an expression, it's called Total Account Relationship Quotient. I think I'm going to miss the name. But basically, they use Net Promoter along with about 5 or 6 other scores around all kinds of loyalties, financial metrics, the actual direction of this market of one, that their largest customers, a lot of them being financial services. And they balance NPS measurements with a lot of other factors that look at loyalty, the future of where their customer is going and how they can expand that loyalty and that trusted advisor status. So I think it's important. I think it's very difficult to apply on a customer of one because you'll get different buying centers with different NPS scores with different relationships. I think NPS is a wonderful metric on the broad base to see where you're exceeding loyalty, where you're getting true promoters and others. I just think it's challenging. It needs to be balanced with other measurements, like in the Telstra example, to really get a full feel of loyalty. Steve, I don't know if you agree, disagree.
Well, I don't want to pick a fight with you, but I do slightly disagree in the sense that I think the concept of NPS fits well with the key account. In other words, if you are investing significantly into becoming a trusted advisor for an account, if you are truly taking your dollars that are marketing, sales, and taking it from your coffers to help them solve their business problems and make them a better company, you should expect something in return. It shouldn't only be a one-way street. Being a trusted advisor is a two-way relationship, in my view. So let's say that you are, in fact, doing a lot over and above just selling into an account, and you want to earn that status. I think you have the right to go back and say, we want you to be a good reference. We want you to provide testimonials. We want you to appear at events on our behalf. And if they refuse to do that, that will be an indication of where you are on the trusted advisor scale. And in the indirect way, I think that sort of reflects NPS. The more formal NPS scores, I agree with Matt. That may not match. But I think the intent of NPS, of getting up to the 9s and 10s, where in fact they are recommending you and providing testimonials, I think that is your goal for every one of your key accounts.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Okay, excellent. We have just a couple of minutes left. If anyone has a last question, we can take that now. I have a question from Walt Stolly. I believe, I hope I pronounced that right for you, Walt. He writes, how realistic is it to expect core procurement to be responsive to the trusted advisor when they are comped by driving lowest costs? Even
yes.
yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
And then he continues, even after value discussions, does this mean the target audience is really C-level?
Boy, the dreaded procurement department. You know, it's amazing how much they have driven costs out of their companies by being as hard as they can in driving bargains. It's easy to tell the power of procurement if a company is willing to jump at a lower price rather than to stay with you because of extra value delivered. And I guess my response to that is, most companies, if you can measure and if it's tangible that you're getting value over and above the dollar that is assigned to contracts for the offer, they will recognize that and they will make compensatory actions and stay with you. If they don't, if procurement is truly maniacally driven, and I think in your question, Julianne, you mentioned they are comped by how low they can get priced down, which I think at times can be so counterproductive to the company that is actually buying the service of the offer, to actually force them to go with the lowest bid rather than the best long-term value delivered. I don't know what you do about that, but if there are companies that have that culture and have that business philosophy, then you just may have to understand that, appreciate it, and move on to another company with a trusted advisor philosophy. Matt, any other comments on that?
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I guess I'll use an example in all our efforts to start researching this. We looked at several reports. We mentioned a few in the beginning. One was done by Boston Consulting Group, where they looked at the kind of account relationship between P&G, Procter & Gamble, and Walmart. And again, there probably isn't a larger key account relationship in the consumer goods space, really, between P&G and Walmart. One of the elements is how do you combat the incredible costs and price pressures. And the four areas that they listed as being the successful tools were collaboration with the customer, way and above. I think that was the number one. And we talked a lot about going beyond just bringing R&D close to the customer. It's co-development. And with that, you have a lot more control over the cost structure. Joint planning on what's going to happen next. Deep interaction at all levels. Steve's mentioned it. And then this idea of trust. That trust will drive the kind of co-productivity of those accounts. I think those are, again, very large, broad topics. They address this need that if you're going to get beyond price, and at the end of the day, price usually isn't the most final decision maker or the most important decision making factor, but when all things are equal, it does become that. So if you can be unique in your collaboration, in your development, and in your kind of joint strategic planning with the customer and build that trust, then I think it helps mitigate the impact of a procurement group. And if P&G can do it with Walmart, I think there is some hope knowing how Walmart is very cost and price driven.
Yeah. I was just thinking here, I think there's an opportunity actually to go to procurement departments, and I don't know if it's training or how you would approach this, but get them to be able to value what their vendors are giving them in terms of value rather than just measuring bottom line price.
Yeah, that's the ease of process, the ease to do business with. It's incredible how important that is.
Exactly. I mean, there's a lot of intangibles that if you could quantify them would make one vendor much more valuable to you than the lower price proposer in many circumstances. So for them to be driven simply by, we looked at the final bid of these four companies, we're going with the lowest, quite often is so counterproductive and frankly counterintuitive that I think there's a lot of work to be done to get the procurement to understand the best way to look at this.
I agree. Great.
Well, excellent. Thank you, everyone, for submitting your questions. Those are great questions and some great dialogue here. Any last comments from you guys as we wrap?
No, thanks for the opportunity. Well, from my side, I'm sure Matt will have them. Thanks for the opportunity, and we look forward to everyone who was on this call that will be at St. Louis with you and your ISA colleagues.
Yes, same thing. Thank you, and hope to meet a lot of you in St. Louis.
Yeah, exactly. And I encourage you, if you haven't registered for the summit in a couple of weeks in St. Louis, we highly encourage you to. There's going to be great conversations like this to continue there. a lot of opportunities to network with people and meet folks from around companies that are dealing with the same things you are. So we highly encourage that. I hope to see you there myself. And with that, we close today. We thank you very much for